So people talk about no government restrictions in southern Missouri. And today we're going to talk about what that means and is it really true? Moving to southern Missouri is the best thing I've ever done for my family. So to answer the question, is it even true, is a mixed bag. Yes and no. So it really does vary in between county and then varies even wildly in between municipalities. For example, we are going to start with the county that has an incredible amount of regulations, and that is Greene County. Of course, Greene County is home to Springfield, which is like the third fastest growing city in Missouri. So it's not surprising that there's the most regulations and restrictions in Greene County, which houses Springfield. And when you look at Greene County's regulations, you can see that they are really unsupportive of agriculture. In fact, I would say Greene County is the hardest county to have some sort of hobby farm or larger agricultural endeavor on your property. So I have explained it before in past videos, and honestly, it is hard to figure out because even when I call Greene County Planning and Zoning, I get different answers about how they can describe to me their rules and regulations regarding having animals on your property. So the first time I called Greene County Planning and Zoning, I talked to a woman named Jennifer. She was very nice, but she told me that there was only one person in the entire department that actually understood the equation of how to calculate how many animals you could have per acreage. So at that point, she had no numbers for me. She just described that the way that they calculate it in Greene County is that you're allowed a certain number of animal units. And she did let me know at that point that one cow was one animal unit and that 0.6 of a pig was an animal unit, which of course I was pretty confused of what 0.6 of a pig was. She said, I really can't answer that for you. She says, we have only one guy that really understands the equation. And that man was supposed to call me and I never got a call back. So I was left with that conversation just being very, very confused. So fast forward several months, I called again asking the same questions. Hey, I've got a client. They're looking at 5 acres. What does that mean for animal units? And this time I talked to a different gentleman and he had some numbers, I just don't know if they're true. So he said that if it was a 5-acre parcel, that they could have 3.5 animal units. And at this point, I felt a little bit more successful, and at the time I thought more knowledgeable. At least I knew that for every 5-acre piece that was ag designated, so that's either A1 or AR, so regular ag or ag residential, if you had 5 acres, you could have 3.5 units. And he also, but what is a unit, right? He had a little bit more information on that. He said, yes, a cow is a unit, a horse is a unit, 10 chickens is a unit, 0.6 of a pig is a unit, and then he would have to have someone else calculate how many either goats or sheep or other species. So at that point, I thought, well, this is pretty wild, but at least I have some answers to the acreage and how many units you can have. Well, you can imagine my confusion and perhaps a little frustration when I called a third time, because this time the parcel was 5.45 acres and the person wanted 5 animals. And so actually shout out to Michelle, 5 miniature donkeys, right? And so I called again, talked to a different guy. This time he had totally different numbers. He said, no, 5 acres is 5 units. And as soon as you go up to 5.1, even 5.1 acres, you actually get 8 animal units. And he said no one had ever calculated mini donkeys. So I just like to be transparent. At this point, I am confused with how many animal units you can have per acreage in Greene County. I think planning and zoning is confused. I think they've come up with such an abstract, not realistic equation that even their own employees are incredibly confused about animal units. So just to say that. So Greene County clearly is the most restrictive, and it goes across the board. So the cost of permits, all of the requirements for like their septic systems, just everything across the board is going to be the most stringent. In fact, it has been told to me that like some of the septic requirements, and I'll have to dig into the details there, but they're more restrictive than DNR. And DNR is the Department of Natural Resources. And anyone that's dealt with DNR knows that they are incredibly restrictive. Even if you're used to, states like California, you're gonna find that DNR is very stringent. So saying all that, I do want to recap. I admit, because we have animals and we prefer the no government restrictions side of things, I've always had a little bit of a negative bias against Greene County. But here's what I would say. Greene County is, what I've been finding, not necessarily more expensive with taxes. For example, I've dug into that in some past videos. If you look at some of the more affluent areas around Greene County, both in Webster, like parts of Rogersville, Christian County, and different pockets, parts of Marshfield, you're gonna find things that are very similar to Greene County. So lots of restrictions, high taxes, restrictions that are more enforced. So I wouldn't say that Greene County is the only place that you'll find that. You will find it in different municipalities. You will also find it in some of the really strict HOA, like gated communities, or even not gated communities. So you really have to just kind of, like I always say, you really have to research every single property as a completely unique and special snowflake, because it truly is. But let's get into some of the counties that are a bit more my speed and why I like them so much. So we're gonna start with one of my favorite, which is Webster County. Now, I know that Webster County is very dynamic. Like I said, some of those municipalities, their codes and their planning and zoning departments are a little strict, and I would definitely pay attention to that, and I would want to do research for you to really look at what those distinctions would be. But on the county level, so if you are in an unincorporated area or you are outside of city limits, at the county level, no government restrictions, really. Now, Webster County is going to be a teeny bit more strict than some of the other counties, and I'll describe why. So first of all, Webster County has no planning and zoning, and they have absolutely no animal restrictions unless you get to a large commercial scale. So like most of these no restriction counties, at the large commercial scale, you are going to be presenting to the county commissioners, right? And there's going to be some process. Like if you're talking like a huge commercial, project. But what you will find in Webster County that is a teeny bit more stringent, Webster County does want you to have a certificate for putting in your septic and your well. And mostly from what I glean from that is they just want to make sure that you use someone that is going to do it of a quality standard. But I'm going to be honest, probably the majority of people do not get that certificate. It is definitely not something that is enforced. I've talked about it in a past video. I'm used to planning and zoning departments from California that look just like a SWAT team. And they are actively pursuing, with guns drawn, issues like an outhouse. Okay, so what I've been exposed to is like, whoa, crazy fascist planning and zoning. So here, I notice that in most cases, it's more like recommendations. There's definitely not a SWAT team that is going to come to your property. So that is why, those reasons are why I do love Webster County, and quite a few other reasons too. Ask me why. Webster has a special place in my heart. So we're going to just kind of work around the counties around Greene County. So up from Webster, well, kind of over, we've got Dallas County, and Dallas County is just as lenient, if not a little bit more. So no planning and zoning, no animal restrictions, and no mention of any certificates for well or septic. Now, saying that, every single county is going to encourage you to have 3 acres per septic tank, because that is a DNR standard. So they're all going to cite that, and they're all going to cite that you should go through DNR for any of those, because that's what they're like legally they're supposed to say. Just letting you know, in a lot of the no restrictions counties, you know, I do not know personally anyone who has gone through DNR. Just saying. So heading on over from Dallas, we're still making that swoop around Greene County. Then we have Polk County, and Polk County is also no planning and zoning, no animal restrictions, but just like Webster County, and I think that this has to be said too, because Webster County is home to Marshfield and Rogersville, so you do have a lot more like just kind of that professional development, a lot more money in the county. And Polk County is home to Bolivar, which is also, it's kind of like a Marshfield. It's of notable size. There's a lot more development there. And so they also recommend getting a certificate for your well and your septic. They encourage you to go through DNR and to use someone who's licensed, reputable. So also, I'm going to let people know, probably not ever enforced, but really exciting to have another county, no planning and zoning, no animal restrictions. So leaving Polk County, we're going to go kind of over and up a little bit. We've got Dade County. Dade County is incredibly relaxed, no planning and zoning, no animal restrictions, and actually no mention of any kind of encouragement of how to do your septic and well. But like I said, you know, everybody says, of course, DNR has the ultimate power there with septic and well. So the next county is, we are on down to Lawrence County. And once again, no planning and zoning, no animal restrictions. And I had a lovely conversation with a woman there on how local governments should not hinder citizens' rights to use their property and even to make money with their property. It was a great conversation. So just have to say, like, all in all, just everyone I talked to at each county government office was so awesome. Like, definitely the kind of people that you would want in those positions. So on down to Berry County. So we're getting into the, you know, Table Rock Lake areas. And Berry County is, you know, kind of lovingly considered the Wild West of southern Missouri in terms of no restrictions, no planning and zoning, no animal restrictions, no short-term rental restrictions, very agreeable to ag, very agreeable to development, but definitely more rural. So that's more of your rural lake experience. And then we move on over to Stone County, and Stone County has probably the most restrictions in certain aspects. I would say that Stone County is very agreeable to development and also trying to preserve some of their land as ag land. I would say that there's some restrictions that seem to be really trying to embrace that, to keep some ag land there. Stone County, of course, has planning and zoning. They've got animal restrictions, but that are all very agreeable to. They definitely want to see animals, you know, stay in A1, which is your regular ag zoning, and your residential. Where Stone County is the absolute strictest county is when it comes to short-term rentals. And if anyone is interested in all of those details, I highly recommend watching my short-term rental video on the Lake counties, because there's a lot of little differences there, and we're not going to get into it in this video. We're going to move up. Instead of moving over to Taney County, we're going to move up to Christian County, because that one is such an important one. Christian County is an interesting mixed bag. So I have to admit, I at first thought that they were going to be way more restrictive than they are, but they're actually fairly agreeable. as you dig into it. Now that is on the county level. You've got your municipalities like Ozark and Nixa that are going to be pretty restrictive. So I've talked about this in my video that's specifically about Christian County, but there are no animal restrictions, not even for R1. So not even for residential, which is pretty rare. The thing about Christian County is in the county jurisdiction, it's incredibly favorable to have animals, but you are going to have more of like the traditional rules with planning and zoning. So they do want you to get permits both for a residential home and any barn or accessory building. They strongly encourage you to, have your well put in through DNR. So you'll be paying through DNR. And then they want you to get your septic done through Christian County Health Department. Now, saying all that, there are some pretty remote corners of Christian County that are very rural, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are not getting all those permits. And like I said, there's no real enforcement that I've seen. I think that there's probably the biggest thing that would happen is like if a neighbor tattled on a neighbor, there might be a request to, become permitted, something like that. So I have mixed feelings about permits and regulations. I do like them when they make sense in terms of like safety to a certain degree. Like I really hate how many electrical fires we have, for example, but I don't really see a lot of rules that actually work with those safety standards. But in terms of permitting costs for Christian County, if you wanted to go buy the book, your residential home is going to be 35 cents per square foot. Your accessory buildings, including barns and shops, are going to be 10 cents per square foot. And to get your septic certified through the health department would be $75. And it's funny because at first when she was telling me this, I did feel that feeling inside of like annoyance, like, how dare you kind of thing. But then when I calculated the cost, I'm like, it's still so minor compared to what is happening in other parts of our country. But 35 cents per square foot at first sounded really high, but then I calculated it, for a 2,000 square foot home, that's $700. I mean, that's not crazy. It's just, it still annoys, whatever, like the renegade part of myself. And then for a 2,000 square foot shop, so remember that's 10 cents per square foot, that would be $200. So you're looking at $900 for, 2,000 square foot home and a 2,000 square foot shop or barn. And then you've got your $75 for your septic. I don't know anyone that's gone through DNR for their well, but I'm sure in the more populated areas, people are doing that, and especially commercial wells, I'm sure. I'm just saying, I personally don't know anyone that has. But so besides the DNR cost for the well, for a small hobby farm in Christian County, you would be looking at roughly $975 to permit your home, your accessory building, and your septic. So it's not crazy. Still rubs me the wrong way a little bit, but I do see the importance of like building standards and codes. So I just want to say that I do. So, okay, so moving from Christian County, we go back to Stone. We're going to go over to Taney. Taney County is kind of a mixed bag. Of course, you've got Branson, and Branson is going to be its own process, right? For all of their rules and regulations. Taney County, though, otherwise is a little bit less restrictive, I have found, than Stone County. Once again, in terms of short-term rentals, watch my previous video and you'll see about Taney. But they seem to be also, pro-development, but also trying to keep some ag land. They definitely have planning and zoning. And, animal restrictions do kind of fall into the same categories of like what they want to see in residential versus A1 and AR, which is your ag residential, but nothing too stringent. What I'm going to say is that where you're going to see it get really strict is when you get into those municipalities. Now, there are such differences between municipalities, and in terms of investment, it really matters where you go in each of these counties. So for example, I do really like Forsyth. I think Forsyth is an up and coming area, so it's still super affordable. The local officials are incredibly pro-development. In fact, here's what I would say about Forsyth is that one reason why I like to encourage investors to go there is that you're going to find less restrictions and more like of just a real like kind of helpful and solution oriented attitude from local officials and different government agencies towards development than you're going to find at the county level. So once again, whether you're looking at residential for yourself, if you're looking at ag for yourself, if you're investing on a small scale like a short-term rental, or if you're looking at a large-scale commercial project, what I would say is that let me do the specific research for you on that specific property in the municipality, in the county, and go through all the filters, because really there is multiple filters to consider. So to wrap this up, as you can see, the majority sentiment of most local governments is to not be restrictive. And then like if you come over farther east, like to where we're at, we're in Douglas County. I mean, it is like a joke. It's the wild, wild east out here, but you know, definitely like a don't tread on me, no government meddling vibe. For sure. Now, that's interesting though, because there are some changes, and I do have to say, I'm seeing a gentrification in Mountain Grove that's bringing some of those annoying traits into the local government officials, like their different modes of operating. And we saw chickens become illegal within the city limits of Mountain Grove, and a lot of restrictions that I notice come with local officials that really see themselves as, you know, trying to gentrify an area. You could kind of call it a Californication. It's interesting because I would say very pro marijuana and very anti homesteader. So that is unfortunate, and that is one reason that we need to keep a close eye on local governments, and we need to actually kind of infiltrate and put pressure on them to keep the preservation of this mindset that I got to experience talking to so many of these county officials who really see it as like an American right that local governments should not be meddling in your life and even in small scale commercial operations. I want to give a shout out to the City Council of Mansfield. They're amazing. And when I first started working with them on a project there, the city clerk was like, how dare cities try to charge for extra permits for people who are trying to do, you know, commercial endeavors. It's hard enough to be an entrepreneur. And we had this amazing conversation, and it's like, I'm just going to tell you, in California, that conversation never could have happened. But I would say it's not just California, you guys. Check out our nation. It is spreading, and you could say it's spreading where California has spread, but it's actually more, you know, of a kind of contagion, I feel like. And we're seeing it in a lot of states that once were very open and very free. So no matter where we're at, we need to preserve that if that is something that we truly care about. So you guys, that wraps up our video. I hope it helps to give you kind of a snapshot of Southern Missouri. I hope too that you can see that majority of it is super favorable to homesteaders and small scale commercial operations. Of course, you know, let me know when you're interested in a property and I'll research that specific property. As always, all the information is going to be in my description. If no government restrictions is something that you are looking for, I'll tell you what, I researched during COVID the entire world. And I'm not joking. We were considering moving to multiple different other countries, and I looked all over, right? Ironically, actually really looked at North Carolina, Idaho, Arkansas, Missouri, and across the board, through many different filters, I found Southern Missouri to be the most free of all of the places in the entire world that I researched. So it is a very special place in the world, and if you move here, please help to preserve it and don't destroy it. Okay, you guys, remember to crush super hard. Let's preserve the stereotype of Americans as incredibly hardworking and productive. And no matter where you're at, let's move the needle more towards freedom and preserving the American ideals than a complete downward spiral. Sound good? Okay, you guys, see you next time. Bye.